Welcome to True Crime Unveiled. Real crimes, real victims, real consequences.
If this is your first time here, subscribe and stay with us, because tonight, we unravel a case as haunting as it is real.
April 26th, 1999. A seemingly ordinary Monday morning in Fulham, London. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and the world continued its usual rhythm, oblivious to the horror about to unfold.
A calm before the storm.
Indeed. Jill Dando, a beloved television presenter known for her warm smile and sharp intellect, was returning home to her house on Gowan Avenue after a morning spent shopping.
She was a household name, a familiar face in millions of homes across the UK.
Exactly. As she reached her front doorstep, a figure emerged from the shadows. In broad daylight, on a quiet residential street, a single gunshot shattered the morning calm. Jill Dando collapsed on her doorstep, a victim of a brutal and seemingly senseless attack.
A shocking crime that gripped the nation.
The scene was chaotic. Neighbors rushed to help. Emergency services arrived quickly, but it was too late. Jill Dando, just 37 years old, was pronounced dead at the scene. The image of her lifeless body on the doorstep, splashed across newspapers the next day, became a haunting symbol of a life tragically cut short.
Do we know anything about the weapon used?
Initial investigations revealed that she had been shot once in the head at close range. The weapon was believed to be a 9mm handgun, though the specific firearm was never recovered. The precision of the shot suggested a professional, or at least someone with some experience handling firearms.
So a targeted attack?
That was the immediate assumption. The sheer audacity of the crime, committed in broad daylight, pointed towards a deliberate and planned execution.
What about witnesses?
Several neighbors reported hearing the gunshot, but no one claimed to have seen the actual shooting or a clear description of the assailant. The speed and efficiency of the attack suggested that the killer had carefully chosen the time and location, knowing Jill's routine and the layout of the street.
A chilling level of premeditation.
The murder of Jill Dando sent shockwaves through the nation. Here was a woman who brought joy and information into people's living rooms, suddenly and violently taken from the world. The public outcry was immense, demanding justice for Jill and answers to the burning question: who would want to kill such a beloved figure? Less than person one greater than. The morning of April 26, 1999, dawned like any other spring day in Fulham, London. A quiet, affluent neighborhood, Fulham was known for its rows of Victorian terraced houses, its bustling high street, and the serene atmosphere along the Thames.
Sounds peaceful.
Jill Dando, the beloved BBC television presenter, lived in Gowan Avenue, a particularly charming street lined with trees and colorful blossoms just beginning to unfurl. Neighbors later recalled the usual sounds of the morning: bird song, the distant rumble of delivery trucks, the gentle clip-clop of joggers on the pavement.
A normal day.
Nothing out of the ordinary seemed to disturb the tranquility of the scene. Jill's home, number 29, was a two-story house with a white facade, nestled comfortably among similar properties. It was a place she had chosen for its privacy and its proximity to both the vibrant city life and the tranquil riverside walks.
Did she live alone?
She was engaged to be married to Alan Farthing, a consultant gynecologist, and they were looking forward to their wedding later that year. The house held the promise of a shared future, a testament to their happiness and the life they were building together.
Tragic.
Inside, the house was tastefully decorated, reflecting Jill's warm personality and her love of simple elegance. Friends described her as a down-to-earth individual, despite her fame. She enjoyed cooking, gardening, and spending quiet evenings at home. This ordinary Monday morning held the promise of another normal day in her life.
You get a sense of her life.
She had recently returned from a weekend trip and was likely looking forward to a busy week ahead, filled with work commitments and wedding preparations. She had no reason to suspect that this day would mark a brutal end to her life, and the beginning of a complex and enduring mystery that would captivate the nation.
Such a contrast.
The calmness of Gowan Avenue that morning stood in stark contrast to the horrific event that was about to unfold, forever shattering the peace of the neighborhood and the lives of those who knew and loved Jill Dando.
Hard to imagine.
The sense of normalcy, of life continuing as usual, only amplified the shock and disbelief when news of her murder broke, rippling through the community and beyond.
It's always the quiet moments before.
April 26, 1999. Dawned like any other spring morning in Fulham, West London. The air was crisp, Sunlight glinted off the wet pavement, and the usual sounds of the city were slowly waking up.
A normal day, so it seemed.
Jill Dando, already a household name thanks to her work on Crimewatch and the BBC News, had a busy day ahead. She left her fiancé Seth's home in Chiswick at around 11 a.m. Her routine was familiar. A drive to her own home in Gowan Avenue, Fulham, some errands, and then on to work later in the afternoon. It was a journey she had made countless times.
Nothing out of the ordinary then.
As she pulled up to her front door, a neighbor across the street noticed her. It was a brief, everyday observation, just a glimpse of a familiar face going about her day. Jill parked her BMW, stepped out, and began to walk towards her front door. She fumbled with her keys for a moment, a detail that would later become tragically significant.
Small details that take on huge importance later.
Security cameras captured her approach, those final steps towards her doorstep. The footage showed her walking calmly, seemingly unaware of anything amiss. The sun was shining, the birds were singing. A perfectly ordinary spring morning in a peaceful London suburb.
The calm before the storm, as they say.
But something in that ordinary scene was subtly off. A figure lurked just out of frame in the security footage, obscured by a parked van. It was fleeting, barely perceptible, and easily missed on first glance. This shadowy figure would become a focal point in the ensuing investigation, a subtle disruption to the otherwise tranquil picture of that fateful morning.
A shadow in the sunlight.
As Jill reached her doorstep, the peace of the morning was shattered. A single gunshot echoed through the quiet street. Neighbors, startled by the sudden, sharp crack, rushed to their windows. The scene they witnessed was horrifying. Jill Dando lying slumped on her doorstep, blood staining the bright spring day.
A sudden, violent end to an ordinary day.
The idyllic image of a peaceful morning was irrevocably broken, replaced by the stark reality of a brutal crime. The sounds of birdsong were replaced by sirens. The warm sunlight now cast long shadows over a scene of unimaginable tragedy. Jill Dando, the familiar face on television, the friendly neighbor, was gone.
Unbelievable.
On the morning of April 26, 1999, the seemingly idyllic calm of Gowan Avenue in Fulham, London, was shattered.
A typical Monday morning, soon to become anything but.
Jill Dando, the beloved television presenter, was returning to her home after a morning out. She parked her BMW just outside her front door, a routine she followed almost daily.
Did she notice anything unusual?
There were no immediate signs of danger, no indications that this ordinary day was about to take a horrific turn. As she reached her doorstep, a figure approached.
Someone she knew?
The details remain shrouded in uncertainty, but what happened next is tragically clear. A single gunshot rang out, echoing through the quiet residential street.
A targeted attack?
The shot, precise and fatal, struck Jill Dando in the head. The assailant, their identity masked by the suddenness of the attack, quickly fled the scene, leaving Jill slumped on her doorstep.
Were there any witnesses?
Neighbors, alerted by the gunshot, rushed to her aid, finding the popular presenter lying in a pool of blood. The emergency services were immediately contacted, but it was too late.
A tragic loss.
Jill Dando was pronounced dead at Charing Cross Hospital shortly afterward. The news of her murder sent shockwaves across the nation. How could such a prominent and well-loved figure be so brutally cut down in broad daylight?
It's hard to believe.
The suddenness and violence of the attack left the public reeling. The image of Jill Dando, a familiar face in millions of homes, now associated with a chilling unsolved murder, was a stark and unsettling contrast.
A true mystery.
Investigators quickly descended upon Gowan Avenue, meticulously combing the scene for clues. Every detail, no matter how small, was scrutinized. The search for the killer had begun.
What were the early leads?
The police were faced with a complex and perplexing case. The motive for the murder remained elusive. Was it a random act of violence, a targeted attack, or something more sinister?
So many questions.
The investigation would delve into every aspect of Jill Dando's life, exploring potential enemies, professional rivalries, and any possible connections to her work as a crime reporter. Less than person one greater than. The morning of April 26, 1999, started like any other spring day in Fulham, London, but within hours, the tranquility would be shattered. Jill Dando, a beloved television presenter, was shot dead on her doorstep. The suddenness and brutality of the act sent shockwaves through the nation. The image of her lifeless body on the steps of her home became a haunting symbol of senseless violence.
A truly shocking event.
The initial reaction was disbelief, followed by an outpouring of grief from the public and Dando's colleagues. News of her death spread rapidly, interrupting scheduled programming and dominating headlines. A sense of vulnerability began to creep into the collective consciousness. This wasn't a gangland shooting or a crime confined to the shadows. It was a brazen attack on a public figure in broad daylight.
It's hard to grasp the audacity of it.
Detectives from the Metropolitan Police were immediately dispatched to the scene, establishing a cordon and beginning the painstaking process of evidence collection. The area was meticulously searched for clues. Witness statements were taken, and forensic experts combed the scene for any trace of the perpetrator. The pressure to find the killer was immense, amplified by the media frenzy and public demand for answers. The investigation was instantly high profile, with every development scrutinized and every theory debated.
A massive undertaking.
As the initial shock subsided, a pervasive sense of fear began to settle over Fulham. Residents, previously comfortable in their quiet neighborhood, now looked over their shoulders, questioning the safety of their streets. The attack on Jill Dando had shattered the illusion of security. The unknown nature of the killer and the apparent randomness of the crime heightened the anxiety. People started to question their own safety, wondering if anyone could be a target.
Understandable, given the circumstances.
The investigation was complex from the start. The lack of an obvious motive and the apparent precision of the killing presented a formidable challenge to detectives. The possibility of a professional hit was considered, as was the theory of a stalker or an obsessed fan. Each avenue of inquiry presented its own set of obstacles. Every potential lead had to be meticulously investigated. The pressure to solve the case mounted as days turned into weeks.
A real puzzle for the investigators.
The murder of Jill Dando marked a turning point. It became a symbol of lost innocence and a reminder of the lurking dangers that could penetrate even the most seemingly safe communities. The case dominated the news cycle for months. The lack of immediate answers only fueled speculation and deepened the sense of unease. The search for Jill Dando's killer would become one of the most high-profile and perplexing investigations in British criminal history.
A tragedy that gripped the nation.
Barry George, the man convicted of Jill Dando's murder, presented a perplexing profile. Outwardly, he appeared to be a loner, drifting through life with a history of petty offenses and an unusual fascination with celebrities.
So not your typical violent offender profile?
Precisely. He had a documented history of stalking and harassing women, often adopting false identities and claiming connections to famous figures. This behavior, while disturbing, didn't necessarily point to a capacity for calculated murder.
But it's certainly a red flag.
Absolutely. Investigators delved deeper into his psychological makeup, searching for clues. They uncovered a complex individual, seemingly trapped between fantasy and reality. George often claimed to be a cousin of Freddie Mercury, the lead singer of Queen, a claim easily debunked.
A sign of a troubled mind, perhaps?
It certainly suggested a disconnect from reality. Psychologists consulted on the case proposed that George might have suffered from a personality disorder, possibly fueled by a desire for recognition and a distorted sense of self-importance.
So did they think he killed Jill Dando for attention?
That was one theory. The act of murdering a high-profile figure like Jill Dando could be seen as a twisted way of achieving notoriety. It aligned with his pattern of seeking connection with celebrities, albeit in a tragically violent manner.
A desperate attempt to insert himself into her world?
Possibly. However, this theory didn't fully explain the meticulous nature of the crime. Dando was shot once, at close range, a style of execution suggesting a degree of planning and control not typically associated with impulsive acts driven by a desire for fame.
So the motive remained unclear.
Yes. The forensic evidence against George was largely circumstantial, relying heavily on a single microscopic particle of firearms residue found in his coat pocket. This raised questions about the reliability of such evidence and the possibility of contamination.
A tiny piece of evidence holding immense weight.
Indeed. The prosecution argued that this particle, along with his history of erratic behavior and proximity to the crime scene, placed him firmly in the frame. However, the defense maintained that George was simply an easy target, a vulnerable individual caught in the crosshairs of a high-profile investigation.
A scapegoat, perhaps?
That was their contention. They argued that the police, under immense pressure to solve the case quickly, focused their attention on George, overlooking other potential leads and interpretations of the evidence.
So was he a fantasist who stumbled into a murder investigation, or a calculated killer hiding in plain sight?
That remains the central question in the Jill Dando case. The contradictions in Barry George's character, the complexities of the forensic evidence, and the lingering doubts about the motive continue to fuel speculation and debate even today. Person 1 greater than. Person 1 greater than. The investigation into Jill Dando's murder was sprawling and complex, involving hundreds of officers and thousands of leads.
A massive undertaking.
One of the early focuses was a man named Barry George who lived near Jill's home and had a history of stalking and minor offenses.
He seemed like a strong suspect initially, right?
He did, and he became a key figure in the investigation. However, the forensic evidence against him was ultimately deemed unreliable, and his conviction was later overturned.
So back to square one.
Essentially, the police then explored the possibility of a professional hit, perhaps linked to Jill's work on Crimewatch, where she often presented stories about dangerous criminals.
A revenge killing?
That was one theory. They investigated known criminals and organized crime groups, but no credible link could be established. Person 1 greater than. Person 1 greater than. Adding to the complexity of the case were a number of taunting communications received by the police and media.
Like what kind of communications?
Anonymous letters, phone calls, some claiming responsibility, others offering cryptic clues. Most were dismissed as hoaxes, the work of attention seekers exploiting the tragedy.
Disturbing.
Indeed. One particular lead that initially seemed promising involved a possible sighting of a blue Range Rover near Jill's home around the time of the murder.
A witness?
Yes. Several witnesses reported seeing a similar vehicle, and the police launched a large-scale search for the car and its driver. Person 1 greater than. Person 1 greater than. This search dominated the investigation for a considerable period. They tracked down hundreds of blue Range Rovers, meticulously checking alibis and vehicle histories.
A huge effort.
It was. Ultimately, however, the lead went cold. None of the vehicles could be definitively linked to the crime scene, and the witness accounts varied in detail.
So another dead end?
Yes, it was a source of immense frustration for the investigators. Each potential breakthrough seemed to evaporate upon closer examination, leaving them with more questions than answers.
The pressure must have been intense to solve this case.
Absolutely, especially given Jill's public profile and the national outcry following her death. The pressure to find her killer was immense.
It's hard to imagine.
The investigation continued, with the police meticulously reviewing existing evidence, re-interviewing witnesses, and exploring new forensic techniques. The case remained open, and the hope of finding Jill's killer, though fading, never completely disappeared.
A long and difficult road.
Indeed. And while there have been numerous theories and suspects over the years, the question of who killed Jill Dando remains a chilling, unsolved mystery. Person 1 greater than. Person 1 greater than. The ripple effect of Jill Dando's murder extended far beyond the immediate circle of her family and friends. The entire nation mourned the loss of a beloved television personality, a familiar face who had entered their homes daily.
It was a real shock.
This sense of collective grief was compounded by the sheer brutality of the crime and the mystery surrounding it. The fact that such a public figure could be gunned down in broad daylight on her own doorstep created a climate of fear and unease.
Absolutely. Nobody felt safe.
People began to question their own safety, particularly those living in what were previously considered safe, affluent neighborhoods like Fulham. The perception of security was shattered.
A real loss of innocence.
For Jill's family, the grief was intensely personal and profound. Her fiancé, Jonathan Waddingham, spoke of the devastating impact of losing Jill so suddenly and violently. He described the immense void left in his life and the ongoing struggle to come to terms with her absence.
Unimaginable.
Her parents, Jack and Jean Dando, were left to grapple with the unbearable pain of losing their daughter. They spoke of their struggle to comprehend the senselessness of her murder and the difficulty of navigating life without her.
Heartbreaking.
The public nature of Jill's death also meant that their grief was constantly being replayed in the media, making it even harder to find any semblance of privacy or peace during such a difficult time.
They were robbed of the chance to grieve privately.
The community of Fulham, where Jill lived and died, also experienced a profound sense of shock and loss. Residents spoke of the fear that gripped the neighborhood following the murder. Many felt vulnerable and exposed, realizing that even in a seemingly safe environment, such a horrific act of violence could occur.
It shattered their sense of security.
The constant media presence and police activity in the area served as a constant reminder of the tragedy. The image of the crime scene, Jill's doorstep stained with her blood, became etched in the collective memory of the community.
A haunting image.
Floral tributes and messages of condolence left outside her home served as a poignant reminder of the life that had been so cruelly taken away.
A symbol of both grief and remembrance.
The investigation itself, with its numerous twists and turns, further added to the emotional toll on the community. Each new development, each new suspect, brought with it renewed hope for justice, followed by inevitable disappointment as leads went cold or proved fruitless.
A roller coaster of emotions.
The eventual arrest and conviction of Barry George brought some sense of closure, but for many, questions still lingered. The lack of a clear motive and the circumstantial nature of the evidence left some doubting his guilt, further compounding the unease and uncertainty surrounding the case.
It's never truly over, is it?
Even today, over 2 decades later, Jill Dando's murder continues to resonate, a chilling reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring impact of violent crime on individuals, families, and entire communities.
A truly tragic story.
The media frenzy surrounding Jill Dando's murder was relentless, a maelstrom of speculation and theories. The investigation, under immense pressure, seemed to be hitting dead ends. Every lead, every potential witness, seemed to evaporate into thin air.
A real pressure cooker situation.
Absolutely. Then, almost a year after the murder, a glimmer of hope. A seemingly insignificant detail resurfaced: CCTV footage from the day of the murder. It showed a man walking near Jill's home around the time of the shooting.
So a potential witness?
Initially, yes. But a closer look at the footage revealed something unsettling. The man's demeanor, his gait, his apparent attempt to avoid the camera lens, it all pointed towards something more sinister.
Suspicions raised.
Exactly. Detectives began meticulously piecing together the man's movements before and after the murder, scrutinizing every frame of the available footage. His identity remained elusive, but the investigation was finally gaining traction.
A phantom in the film.
The police released enhanced images of the man to the public, appealing for information. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of calls flooded in, each tip meticulously followed up. The net was closing in.
The power of public appeal.
One name began to surface repeatedly: Barry George. A local man with a history of minor offenses and a known fascination with celebrities. He lived near Jill Dando's home and had a documented history of stalking and harassing women.
A disturbing pattern.
Indeed. The pieces were falling into place, albeit slowly and with painstaking effort. The police placed Barry George under surveillance, gathering evidence, building their case brick by brick.
The walls were closing in.
On May 25, 2000, almost exactly a year after Jill Dando's murder, Barry George was arrested at his home. He was charged with murder, setting the stage for a trial that would captivate the nation.
A year-long investigation culminating in this.
The arrest marked a significant turning point in the case, but it also raised more questions. Was Barry George the lone gunman? What was his motive? The answers, it seemed, were still shrouded in mystery.
The mystery deepens.
In the quiet, leafy suburb of Fulham, a life was taken, a career cut short, and a nation left in disbelief.
Such a public figure, yet the killer remained hidden.
Jill Dando, the beloved television presenter, was murdered on her doorstep on April 26, 1999. The brutality and brazenness of the act shocked the nation and triggered one of the largest murder investigations in British history.
It's hard to believe it happened in broad daylight.
Despite exhaustive inquiries, meticulous forensic analysis, and countless interviews, the question of who killed Jill Dando, quote, remains a chilling enigma. The official narrative points to Barry George, a local man with a history of stalking and unusual behavior.
His conviction was controversial, wasn't it?
Indeed. His conviction was overturned in 2008 after serious doubts were raised about the reliability of the forensic evidence presented against him, specifically, a single particle of gunshot residue found in his pocket.
So where does that leave the investigation?
In a state of unsettling ambiguity. With Barry George acquitted, the case went officially cold, leaving a void of justice and a lingering sense of unease.
So the real killer is still out there?
Potentially. Several alternative theories have been explored, from professional hitmen to disgruntled stalkers, and even a possible link to Serbian war criminals, due to Jill's charity work with Kosovan refugees. However, none of these theories have yielded conclusive evidence.
A lot of unanswered questions remain.
The case serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most ordinary settings. Jill Dando's murder remains a tragic, unsolved mystery, a wound on the national psyche that refuses to heal.
It's a disturbing thought.
The image of a popular television personality, gunned down on her doorstep, has become ingrained in the public's memory. It forces us to confront the unsettling reality that even in seemingly safe and familiar environments, evil can be hidden in plain sight, waiting to strike.
It chills you to the bone.
Perhaps the most unsettling aspect of this case is the possibility that the killer may never be brought to justice, leaving a permanent shadow of doubt and fear.
Could it happen again?
Thank you for walking with us through the shadows. The story doesn't end here. It lingers, echoing through time, reminding us that the darkest truths often hide in plain sight. Until next time, stay curious and stay vigilant.
Stay safe and keep questioning everything.